When you're in a battle, it's always good to keep an eye on the enemy. Today, we'll look at why the leading globalist organization has declared America a disappointment and what they hope to do about it. Anytime they talk, we need to make sure we listen so we know how to counterattack. They point to President Trump as the problem, but we'll point to why they are to blame in this episode of Analysis Behind the News, where we provide the perspective that you can use to restore American liberty and independence. The organization we are alluding to is the Council on Foreign Relations. Now, if you're a member of the John Birch Society or a frequent viewer of these videos, then you know the CFR is the leading organization influencing our government to lead the globalist effort to build world government. To give you an idea of their influence, we have charted their involvement throughout presidential administrations since their founding. If these were John Birch Society members, then you know the media would go into shock and seek to rout them from these positions. But when it's an organization that is anti-American and seeks to jettison our country's freedom and independence in favor of a new world order, then it's okay and even encouraged. This type of organized effort of subversion tells you nothing happens in politics that wasn't planned, to quote another globalist, FDR. Anyway, the CFR publishes a journal called Foreign Affairs. The September-October 2020 issue is titled The World Trump Made. All of the articles are written through the lens of globalism, which takes a dim view of a country's sovereignty, but declares that interdependence upon world government bodies is good and essential. Gideon Rose, the editor of the journal, opens his regular one-page editorial with the question, how will historians judge President Donald Trump's handling of foreign policy? He uses this to launch into a screed of cherry-picked quotes from authors of that issue's articles. For example, Margaret McMillan writes in the cover story, after nearly 4 years of turbulence, the country's enemies are stronger, its friends are weaker, and the United States itself is increasingly isolated and prostrate. In another article, current CFR President Richard Haass states that the United States and the world are considerably worse off, as if America is responsible for the rest of the world. Former Deputy National Security Advisor in the Obama administration, Ben Rhodes, wrote in his article, global confidence in the United States has collapsed. U.S. alliances have eroded, the liberal international order is unraveling, and China is expanding its influence and selling its techno-totalitarian model of government as an alternative to liberal democracy. The absence of any U.S. leadership in response to the COVID-19 pandemic has opened a window onto a new world disorder, one in which crude nationalism makes effective collective action impossible and conflict almost inevitable. Well, first of all, the fact that this was written by someone who swore an oath to the U.S. Constitution is enraging. Allegiance to the Constitution means not working to undermine it, rather promoting its virtues and protecting it in all that you do. Those that work toward globalism or place maintaining a certain international order above the main function of the federal government, which is to protect our God-given rights as defined in the Declaration of Independence, deserve to be fired at least or tried for treason at worst. A free and independent country cannot stay as such if it is to be tied to other countries, either through overreaching trade agreements, radical environmental agreements, unwise security agreements, or if it is bureaucratically linked to any form of government body outside of or above our own. With its acknowledgement of an individual's God-given rights, its institution of governments to protect those God-given rights, and with the practice of Judeo-Christian morality among its population, especially in a way of individual responsibility, America has been that shining city on the hill, an example of liberty and freedom for all throughout the world. But forces have been working to wipe that away from the inside out, remaking government, public opinion, and policy in their favor to turn out global citizens at the expense of American sovereignty and independence. to ensure that God-given rights are turned into privileges that can be revoked at any time by government. One of America's hallmarks of freedom is our local law enforcement system. Nearly all countries around the world have a national police that enforces the state's edicts onto its people. In the United States, our police are locally based and held accountable by the communities that they serve. They don't answer to those outside of this area. In fact, our form of government encourages the practice of nullification through interposing, which means that individuals and officials have the obligation to block laws or edicts that are overreaching or unconstitutional. This system adds another layer in the protection of our God-given rights. Taking this away opens up a direct line of attack on not only our state sovereignty, but individual liberty as well. Yet this is something that globalists must do if the U.S. is to be a simple cog in the machinery of their so-called New World Order. This is why globalists are helping to fund and fuel the Black Lives Matter movement, as well as funding local elections to get radical leftist candidates voted in. In fact, the CFR helps to promote this tactic of taking away local police by suggesting police reform in its journal. In Lawrence Ralph's article, he states, "For too long, a culture of American exceptionalism has been a barrier to the implementation of policies that have improved public safety around the globe." Now, the United States' capacity to heal as a nation could very well depend on its willingness to listen and learn from the rest of the world. Now, he advocates for disarming the police, as well as other illogical measures that will only make the police job much more difficult, dangerous, and debilitating. Of course, all of this causes even more societal problems, leading the way for a much larger role for the federal government to play, thereby erasing local accountability and opening up avenues for national police. Now, we don't have time to get into how the CFR is also ramping up unconstitutional government through COVID-19 responses, but do a little research out there on the CFR figureheads and what they are advocating in this field. We now have reprints available of the New Americans Directing the Disorder article and accompanying charts that you can use to show others the influence the CFR has on policy making in this country. Its record is not good. The article accompanying the charts is a great introduction to the organization. So please, distribute these to others to help them see that there are organized forces chipping away at their independence and our freedom. Who do you know that cares about those two issues? Links are in the video description. I'm Bill Hahn for the John Birch Society, and until next time, stay informed, stay active, and stay safe, Patriots.